This boy was the bastard of a royal family. Since he was a child, Johan was beaten by his brothers for being weak. That's when he learned that the only person he could ever trust was himself. After reincarnating into the body of a bastard prince, he made one decision: to become a bodybuilder. He trained by running for miles, eating insane amounts of protein, and practicing martial arts every single day. After years of brutal training, he became a monster. He could punch through trees and bring down entire forests, because with every workout, his crushing strength kept growing without limit. This world is a place where the blood of the weak is spilled, and the strong drink it down. A creature walks through a dark forest. It stops, then begins to graze on some leaves. Hidden in the brush, a hunter watches. That is his prey. He reminds himself to stay calm, to remember his training. Bowstring taut, he readies the shot, but just as he releases, the bow snaps. The sudden sound startles the animal. His companion shouts out for Lord Johan. He demands to know why Johan broke the bow instead of catching the prey. Johan replies that the bow broke too easily, but the man argues he bought it only a week ago. He asks why a noble like Johan insists on being a hunter. He suggests he could have learned swordsmanship instead. The young noble remains silent. He explains that swordsmanship doesn't pay until you're hired, then suggests they move on. He needs money to survive in this rotten world. His name is Johan, but before, he was Kim Johan. He reincarnated into this world after an accident. Though reborn a noble, he is last in his family's hierarchy. He has zero chance of inheriting anything. Suddenly, his companion stops him. Ahead of them lies a pack of wolves. His companion fires an arrow near one of the beasts. The pack scatters in fear. Johan watches silently. The world he reincarnated into is a very realistic medieval era. They find a pile of bodies. The young man comments that even death grants them no rest. His companion asks if they could be from their village. Johan says it's hard to tell, but one thing is certain: the weak are just prey for the strong, and to avoid becoming prey in this era, he needs money. When he arrived in this world, he hoped to awaken an incredible ability. He realized that didn't exist here, so he changed his goal. That goal is money. With money, he can leave this territory and do anything, become a merchant, or even a free farmer. While Johan is focused on his thoughts, his companion calls him over to see something. He points out the medicinal herb he had mentioned, Little Demon's Grass. It's rare and great for stopping bleeding. Johan immediately snatches up the herb. It must be expensive. He stows the plant away. Suddenly, the young man spots an herb pouch on the ground. He tells his companion he dropped it, but the man says it isn't his. Johan thinks that's impossible, as nobody else goes this deep into the forest. The older hunter then realizes something. A sudden sound echoes through the woods, startling both of them. They hear someone running desperately for help. The barking of wolves gets closer, putting them on alert. Then they find a child cornered up a tree by a wolf pack. His companion recognizes her as Dell, Robert's daughter. He wonders what a child is doing out here. The wolf pack approaches. Joseph warns there are too many wolves to fight alone. He suggests retreating to get help, but Johan simply advances toward them. His companion warns him these aren't ordinary wolves. The young man says he'll distract them so Joseph can rescue Dell. Joseph falls silent at the noble's attitude. He can't believe Johan is offering himself as bait to save a simple commoner. Johan then realizes this place is a gold mine. He should have hurried to learn hunting. He counts at least 10 wolves. He calculates that if he sells all the pelts, he'll make a fortune. Then, he shouts for his precious sources of money to wait for him. The older hunter doesn't understand what's happening. Johan draws his sword. His companion questions what kind of messy swordsmanship that is. The animals rush to attack him. He moves quickly. One of the wolves leaps at him. It bites down on the blade of his sword. The sword shatters after the wolf bites it. The animal recoils from the impact, surprising Johan. Then another wolf attacks from the side. He is quickly surrounded by the pack. Joseph watches the scene, calling for his lord. He desperately screams Sir Johan's name. Meanwhile, in Baltroden village, the Eitz family is conducting their territorial inspection. Villagers bow as the entourage passes. A man shields a child in his arms. Madame Eitz, the concubine, complains about the place's bad smell. The first son, Philip Eitz, remains silent. Gezin Eitz, the lord of the territory, also complains about how the countryside stinks. Philip informs his father that Johan hasn't been found. He suggests sending soldiers to search for him. Gezin reacts angrily at the mention of the name. He says to forget the boy. He doesn't care if he dies like his mother. Lord Gezin continues to laugh mockingly. He stops suddenly when he spots something. Gezin asks about a large hay bale at the village entrance. A villager explains they covered the traces of Johan's training. The Lord scoffs. He continues mocking, questioning how a pathetic insect could even train. but his expression changes completely when he looks at what the hay was hiding. Gessen sees the mark of a fist perfectly embedded in a tree trunk. Then he notices several other surrounding trees have been destroyed in the same way. Back in the forest, Johan is on the ground, surrounded by the wolf pack. One wolf growls but hesitates before biting. Realizing sword fighting isn't his style, he throws the animal aside. He then challenges his lovely money sources to attack him. Now he will fight his own way. To not become prey in this era of survival of the fittest, he needs money. And to earn that money, he knows he must defeat the pack advancing toward him. He needs overwhelming strength, enough to transcend human limitations. And with a flurry of punches, he attacks the pack. Joseph watches the scene, paralyzed. The blows hit the wolves squarely. He launches one away along with others. He grabs another creature by the neck and finishes it with a precise strike. The animal falls lifeless to the ground. His companion can barely believe that strength. Johan stands amidst the fallen wolves, and he wonders how much all of this is worth. Johan had no choice but to accept a hard truth. Life in this world wasn't easy. His high-ranking brothers branded him an illegitimate, motherless bastard. They tormented him constantly, beating him whenever they pleased and threatening him if he dared to fight back. He soon realized just how merciless this world was. No one would care if he died. The only person he could count on was himself. So he asked himself what he needed to survive in a medieval world. Fortunately, he held an advantage over the people of this era, his past life as a modern student. Because of this, Johan's mind harbored knowledge that medieval people couldn't even imagine. He decided to use that knowledge, starting with exercise science and high-intensity interval training. He also utilized it to create a nutritionally balanced diet from foods others discarded as trash. The young man created a training regimen based on modern science and practiced close-quarters martial arts. And so, his continuous training compounded over time. After several years, his effort showed results. He continued to strike the tree. Finally, the tree gave way, snapping from the impact. With every session, his body displayed even more overwhelming strength. He felt invigorated. No one knew if that strength was a blessing or a new challenge. The sound of battle in the forest finally ceased. Johan dusted off his hands. He looked at the defeated wolves and confirmed that seemed to be the last of them. Joseph checked on Dell, and the girl hugged him. The older hunter sighed. He scolded Sir Johan for being reckless, questioning him about the danger he had courted. But he admitted he was moved by Johan's honorable action, stepping in front of a beast to save the young servant girl. Johan, however, was only wondering which wolf pelt would sell for the highest price. He asked what Joseph had said, but the man replied it was nothing. Then, the young man turned to Dell to ask if she was okay, and the girl thanked him. Suddenly, her expression changed. Behind them, a giant creature emerged from the darkness. They turned to face the new threat, and the girl covered her face. The creature stared straight at them. The giant creature growled at Johan. Joseph yelled that it was a monster. He insisted Sir Johan run, claiming a monster of that size required an entire army to defeat. Johan just asked if the creature was their leader. He apologized for killing its subordinates, explaining that wolf pelts sold for a good price. The creature continued to growl. He realized the monster viewed him as prey. It lunged, mouth open for the attack. Johan said it didn't matter what it was. With a rock in hand, he declared that the monster's hide would be worth even more. He struck the creature's head with the stone. The monster recoiled from the wound. Johan complained about scratching the hide, lamenting that the price would drop. The creature glared at him with fury. It unleashed a howl that echoed through the forest. The creature's howl affected everyone. They immediately covered their ears. Johan also reacted to the piercing sound. He wondered what that was. He realized his strength was draining away. Suddenly, a fierce battle erupted in the clearing. Johan fell to the ground, completely disoriented. Sitting up, he tried to understand what had happened. He looked around, wondering where the monster was. Then he realized the creature had disappeared. He spotted Joseph and Dell lying on the ground. Approaching them, he saw they were all safe. He lifted Joseph onto his back, saying they needed to return quickly before other monsters appeared. He started moving away from the scene. As he walked, he regretted not being able to take the wolf pelts he wanted so badly. The night continued in the silent forest. As he approached, he noticed the village was still lit up. He wondered if everyone was looking for Dell, hoping to score points with her father. He imagined his father naming him successor for defeating a wolf pack, but he dismissed the idea, hoping they would at least appoint him to the guard so he wouldn't have to worry about food anymore. Suddenly, he stopped, noticing something. A torch lit the darkness ahead. He encountered his father's inspection retinue blocking the path. Johan didn't understand what was happening. Philip Eitz yells Johan's name. He furiously demands to know why Johan missed their father's inspection. Johan suddenly realizes he completely forgot about the commitment. Gessen Eitz rides closer, calling Johan an immature bastard. He dismounts, planting his feet firmly on the ground. Holding the unconscious Dell, Johan tries to explain his absence to his father, but Gesson tells him to shut up. Gesson raises his axe. He threatens to crush Johan's skull for daring to ignore him. The young man stares at the ground for a moment. Then, he looks up. Johan declares he didn't miss the inspection on purpose. He was saving people in the forest. A man from the crowd rushes forward, recognizing little Dell. He embraces the child, grateful she is safe, saying he looked everywhere for her. The man keeps hugging Dell, repeating how happy he is to have found her. Johan points and explains that the girl was surrounded by wolves in the forest, and he fought to defeat them. Before the villagers, he concludes that although he missed the inspection, he fulfilled his duty as the son of a knightly house. He bows in apology, promising to continue doing his best for the estate's safety. Johan even suggests it would be great if his father gave him the position of captain of the guard. He smiles, believing his self-promotion was perfect. Gesson questions the story, demanding to see the dead wolves as proof. Johan insists he isn't lying. He claims he even encountered the great black wolf. The villagers watch the exchange. Gesson's mouth falls open. He accuses Johan of lying and threatens to rip his mouth off. Johan asks for a duel, agreeing to prove his skills. He turns away, realizing he has no other choice. Gesson accepts with a grin, saying he'll see just how skilled the boy really is. He orders Johan to raise his sword for a duel involving only weapons. Johan stares back, repeating the question about fighting with a weapon. It dawns on him that his father never taught him how to use one. Father and son face off in the arena's center. Gesson orders him to draw his sword. Johan reveals his broken sword hilt. Gesson then orders Philip to lend Johan his blade. Philip approaches, advising Johan to beg for forgiveness. It's the only way he'll leave alive. Johan refuses. He insists he did nothing wrong, and a man doesn't run. He pushes his brother aside, grips the new sword, and prepares for the duel. Gesson adjusts his helmet for combat. Facing his father, Johan focuses, determined to prove his worth. He charges into the attack. Gesson watches with wide eyes. Johan moves with overwhelming force. His sword strikes Gesson's axe head-on. The blade shatters from the impact. A shard flies off, striking Johan in the head. Gesson falls back, still clutching his weapon. He glares at his son with gritted teeth. Gesson advances with the axe, calling Johan a parasite. Johan leans back from the force of the blow. Philip declares that Johan insulted the Lord. A villager comments that Gesson truly intends to kill him. Gesson attacks again, yelling that he never taught Johan swordplay because he's useless. He presses the attack, claiming Johan will never surpass him. Gesson shouts that the estate is his and no one, not even the emperor, can take it. Johan stares back as blood runs down his face. Blood from the forehead wound drips into his eyes. Philip screams Johan's name. Gesson strikes with the side of the axe handle toward Johan's face. The crowd watches. Johan blocks the blow with his sword hilt, which begins to crack under the force. The hilt shatters into pieces. He looks at his father and admits defeat. Johan kneels before Gesson, scattered sword fragments surrounding him. Gesson approaches and tells him to know his place. He threatens Johan, saying that if he sees him again, he really will crush his skull. Gesson turns and leaves, abandoning Johan kneeling alone in the arena. The crowd surrounds him, and a villager calls his name. Far away in a church, a voice declares that Sir Gesson's actions were unjust. Inside, Johan tells the speaker to keep his voice down, but the priest shouts that he doesn't care, as he is from the Vatican. He continues, questioning how Gesson could treat his own son that way. Johan, his head bandaged, insists he is alive and fine. The priest complains that it was ridiculous. The young man looks away. He leans against a table, lamenting. Even though he never learned swordplay, he didn't realize he was this powerless. The priest consoles him, explaining it makes sense that he lost. Sir Gesson is battle-hardened and inherited the family techniques. He recounts a rumor that Sir Eitz once killed 300 soldiers alone on a neighboring estate, impressing Johan. Johan comments on the importance of technique. He adds that he thought he could defeat his father, since he faced a massive black wolf. The priest turns sharply toward him. He grabs Johan, demanding to know if it's true he saw a black wolf in the forest. Johan confirms the story, adding that Joseph and Dell saw it too. The priest reacts with alarm. Johan asks what the problem is with the wolf. The priest turns away, pulling a book from a shelf. He opens it in front of Johan. The priest explains that black wolves have long been considered taboo, an omen of death. Ancient stories say they bring death and bloodshed. Johan says he doesn't believe that, but supposes the wolf might have harbored his duel with his father. The priest reassures him not to worry. They are just old tales. He suggests perhaps God is helping Johan because he is a good person. The priest concludes that Johan is someone who puts others before himself, making Johan smile. Johan questions this. The scene pulls back to a night view of the estate. The narrative shifts to the Brits' barony. near the Eights lands. Cries for help and pleas for mercy echo through the night. A woman clutching a child begs for her life. Both are seen in their final moments. A trail of blood spreads through the darkness. A hand falls lifelessly onto the dirt. One soldier asks why they try to run. Another replies they'll die anyway, noting the cruelty of it all. A third soldier questions the order to kill everyone and burn the bodies, then decides he doesn't care. They are just doing their job for the gold. Two figures meet before a large burning gate. A man kneels before Sir Karamov, reporting that the mercenaries are finished. He hands over the Brit's family signet ring. Karamov simply repeats the family name. She comments that she had high expectations for Brits, but he didn't last 2 attacks. Karamov then introduces herself as the Sword of the Holy Empire and the representative of Her Imperial Majesty. As the seal collector, she decrees that she will punish all corrupt nobles according to the Emperor's wishes. She promises that all who stand with the Emperor will be rewarded with gold and honor. Karamov points forward, ordering her troops to kill, loot, and burn everything. Her army advances, declaring the Eights estate is next. On a battlefield, 2 figures trade sword blows. Blades clash dangerously close to a warrior's helm. A knight in full plate blocks an attack. His hooded opponent parries in return. The swords lock together violently. A swift move rips the helm from the hooded warrior. Blood sprays out into the darkness. The empty helmet rolls across the stone floor, revealing the man's bloodied face. His eyes suddenly snap open. Johan jolts upright in bed, gasping. He's alone in his room. Hand to his face, he wonders if it was just a dream. Then realization hits. He's had the same nightmare for days, ever since seeing that black wolf. He remembers the old warning. The wolf is an ancient omen of misfortune. Its very existence was a bad sign, one that spread blood and brought death. He recalls that priests even called it the sign of death, but Johan dismisses the thought. It's just a legend, he tells himself. He didn't hurt the wolf. Then, the memory of meeting the creature in the forest returns. He did throw a rather large rock at it. Shaking off these useless thoughts, he decides to go train. At dusk, Johan is training alone on a hill. A voice calls him a useless brat. He turns. 2 men approach, reminding him of his father's warning to keep a low profile. They provoke him, sneering, asking if chopping wood all day really makes him any stronger. The mockery continues. Breaking logs is a cheap trick for someone like him, they say. One mocks his dream of joining the guard, insisting his father would never appoint trash like him. He finishes by saying his father would only use him to crack his skull open and feed him to the pigs. With a single punch, Johan completely obliterates the wooden log in front of him. The 2 men stare, eyes wide, mouths agape. He turns to the splintered tree stump, then back to the men. He invites them to step closer and repeat what they just said. They refuse and flee, yelling that they'll tell Johan's father everything. He watches them go, muttering that they are pathetic idiots for not worrying about their own futures. Deciding to ignore them, he returns to his training. Another voice confirms that what they said is true. Philip approaches, informing Johan that their father has no intention of appointing him to any position. Johan replies that he suspected as much. Considering he hasn't been killed yet, it could be worse. Philip asks if he's disappointed, but Johan simply says he'll have to find another way to make a living. Then Philip reveals the truth. Their father is afraid of him. Johan stops his punch mid-air. The young man turns to face his brother. Philip explains that Johan's undeniable strength is a threat to their father. Father wants obedient sons like Philip, but Johan insists on living by his own principles. Philip concludes that their father believes Johan's strength will one day take everything from him, just as he once took everything from their grandfather. Johan turns with a smile, calling it all absurd. Philip orders a servant to bring what he requested, and the man obeys promptly, opening a large cloth sack. Johan stares at the contents, asking what it is. Inside the sack are a surcoat, a longsword, and a spare breastplate. Philip declares he is not like their father. He isn't foolish enough to discard someone capable. Johan watches him silently. Philip then promises to appoint Johan captain of the guard once he becomes lord. He asks him to keep training and stop causing trouble. Johan yells back that he never starts the trouble. Philip and the servant depart, leaving the young man alone on the hill. He looks down at the breastplate and realizes it's the exact same armor from his dream. He wonders if wearing it means he'll die the same way he did in the nightmare. Yet, for some reason, he feels he can overcome that destiny, even without proof. Johan decides that regardless, He'll need gear if he wants to win. He dons the breastplate and cloak, adjusting the equipment to his body. A laugh echoes in the distance as the sun sets. In a tavern, a man insists he's telling the truth, but another accuses him of making things up. The first man recounts how Sir Johan killed wolves and drew his sword solely to save Dell and Joseph, calling him a true model of a knight. Two men agree that Johan is far nobler than Lord Gason, while a hooded figure listens nearby. Another villager adds that Johan should have just cut off Gason's head that day. Joseph arrives at the bar and announces that drinks are on him. The hooded figure asks why. Joseph raises his mug, proposing a toast to Sir Johan for saving his daughter Dell. One of the men turns to the stranger asking who he is, as he's never seen him around before. The hooded figure merely points out that they were bad-mouthing the Lord in front of a complete stranger. The villager stares at him. The stranger comments that the locals here don't seem to fear anything. The hooded man then says he found their story quite interesting. He demands they tell him more, scaring the villagers. He specifies that he wants to know more about Johan Eitz. Far away, Johan walks through the village at night. He daydreams about Philip's promise to make him captain of the guard, believing his golden path has finally arrived. Suddenly, Johan stops walking and looks to the side. He spots a drunken man sitting on the ground. Deciding that, as future captain of the guard, he cannot ignore a citizen, Johan approaches. He offers to walk the man home so he doesn't catch a cold. Suddenly, he feels something icy against his neck. A dagger is pressed to his throat. He looks up, trying to understand what is happening. He wonders if Gason sent the assassin, but dismisses the thought. Then he considers the mistress, or even Philip. He can't guess who sent him. Johan asks his attacker what he wants. Assuming it's about money, he offers everything he has in exchange for his life. But the hooded man claims he already has more than enough money. The figure calls him by name and says he'll ask one question. He warns him, if the answer doesn't please him, his throat will be cut right there. Johan is shocked by the condition, realizing a wrong answer means death. He composes himself, determined to give the perfect answer to survive. The man announces the questioning begins. Johan steels himself. The hooded man comments on Johan's physique and asks if he is truly Gessen's son. Johan is taken aback by the question. Given the life or death stakes, he grinds his teeth, unsure how to answer. Finally, Johan says that sometimes a lion can be born from the lineage of a pig. The hooded figure remains silent. Johan wonders if he gave the wrong answer. The man's hood moves slightly. Suddenly, he explodes into laughter. He states the answer pleased him, but refuses Johan's request to be released. The figure declares that Johan Eitz now belongs to him. Johan can't understand what that means. That man is Kagal, the Empire's greatest assassin and the poison master of the Nasos Guild. He perfected his swordsmanship through countless killings, becoming known as the Poison Serpent. But Kegel had a problem. He couldn't find a successor to inherit his technique. He searched everywhere, but only found people incapable of succeeding him. A few showed potential, but were ultimately defeated. One refused to learn an assassin's skills, preferring death over staining his honor. Kegel granted his wish. Over 30 heirs of knightly families died at his hands. Impatient, he visited the Empire's witch. A voice calls him the Poison Serpent, the one who grants peaceful deaths to all. The witch reveals the disciple he seeks resides in Eitz Castle, one of that lord's sons. Kaigal questions if his successor could really be in such a forgotten place. The witch offers his money back if the prophecy fails. He accepts the deal, deciding to trust her. Kegel wanted to believe. He had wasted too many years and was running out of time, yet doubt accompanied him as he entered the Eitz estate. Looking at the castle, he decided he would kill the boy if he didn't like him. Back in the present, Kegel introduces himself as the Nasos Guild Master and says Johan will become his successor. He gives him a choice: die by his sword or learn his swordsmanship. Those are the only paths. Johan is speechless at the proposal. Then, Johan shouts, asking how much he needs to pay to learn. Kegel replies that he isn't taking money, surprising Johan. He realizes a guildmaster with incredible skill will teach him for free. Johan grabs Kegel, saying he's waited his whole life for someone like him, but Kegel reminds him his swordsmanship is that of an assassin. He warns that just learning the technique will mark him as a disgrace to any knightly family. Johan yells that he doesn't care about honor or shame and begs to be taught. Kegel agrees, noting this kind of brat is a first for him. Johan addresses him as master. He then asks if he'll get an allowance, since Kegel mentioned having lots of money. Kegel stares at him, concluding the brat is truly unbelievable. The scene shifts to Eitz Castle. Gezen Eitz, mounted on his horse, announces the inspection is over and he'll be away for a while. Philip says goodbye and promises to look after the castle. Madame Eitz then declares that no matter how hard he fights, that castle will be hers. Philip calls her foolish and states that he will be the next lord of the castle. Gieson turns away, saying he's sick of both of them and they can do whatever they want. Inside the castle, Philip informs his father that Johan hasn't returned yet and asks what they should do. Philip looks at his father, but Gieson orders him not to waste time on that brat. His death is none of their concern. Philip apologizes to his father. He turns away, wondering where Johan is and what he's doing. Meanwhile, in the forest near the castle, Kegal says he'll verify Johan's skills. Johan asks to borrow a sword, explaining he breaks them frequently. Kegal hands one over. Kegal watches him, finding the boy reckless and disliking everything about him. He draws his own sword, considers killing him right there, and asks if he's ready. Johan answers yes, sword in hand. Master and apprentice face off in the forest. Kegal questions Johan's stance and decides he too must die. Johan asks if he needs to use swordsmanship or if he can fight however he wants. Kegal tells him to do as he prefers. Kegal authorizes him to fight with anything, fists, stones, or blades. Johan grips the sword tightly. He unleashes overwhelming power. Kegal watches him amid fragments shattering in the air. At that moment, he finally understood. All his doubts were completely unfounded. Kegal's eyes widen at the revelation. That boy was monstrously strong. Johan charges with a punch that creates immense air pressure, surprising Kegal. Kegal realizes if that punch lands, his lungs and muscles will be crushed. It's as if he's not fighting a human, but a lion. Later, Kegal's hand rests on his weapon's hilt. The scene shows an intense fight where his master moves unpredictably. Johan questions his movement pattern, unsure if the attack will come from above or below. Then the master's blade hits him squarely in the face. He's knocked to the ground by the impact. His master steps back a few paces, watching him lying there. He comments that he hit him with the flat of the blade, yet Johan didn't faint. He calls him ridiculous. The master claims if he had been born 1,000 years ago, he would have been called a legendary hero. Johan thanks him, but Kegal interrupts to say there's a critical weakness. At this rate, he will die no matter what. Lying down, Johan asks what he means by that. The master explains that Johan can't control his strength, and that will kill him. Johan retorts it's not like he's attacking himself. Kegal prepares for the next move. He challenges him to attack again if he's so confident. He proposes that if Johan can break his sword instead of his own, he'll give him gold. The youth charges, yelling at him to keep his promise. He strikes with all his might. The two blades clash with great impact, but Johan's sword shatters into pieces. The recoil force pushes him backward. Johan realizes the situation is exactly like the fight against his father. His master asks if he understands now, stating he lost to his own strength. He warns him to learn to control his power, or he will die. Johan removes a fragment from his clothes and asks if he threw it there on purpose. Johan affirms he understands now. He will learn to control his strength to survive, for he is the future captain of the Eit's Guard. His master explains that if he knows how to contain his power, something like this is possible. Then Kegal attacks using the sword's sheath to demonstrate. The sheath cuts his armor with ease. Johan is perplexed, realizing his armor was cut by just a sheath. The master asks if he saw, explaining that with control, it's possible to cut anything even without a sword. He says he can't imagine how powerful Johan will become once he learns to control his power. Johan listens attentively. Kegal declares training will begin, warning it will be difficult, and he might even die. He asks if the youth is ready. With a smile, Johan shouts yes. The scene shifts to a village with a castle in the distance. Johan walks through the village streets. After a while, he appears with a bruised face. He reflects that he's finally learning to hold back, but wonders when he'll learn real swordsmanship. Johan turns at a noise, wondering what it is. He spots a group of soldiers and questions if they are elves. Approaching, he asks who they are, but one orders him to leave a restricted area immediately. Johan points at the elf, asking who he is to give orders. The soldier asks who Johan thinks he is. He introduces himself as a member of the Wolves of Acton, the Empire's elite mercenaries. The youth gets excited hearing they are mercenaries and asks about the pay. Two respond they receive 2 gold coins for a single job, a value incomparable to a guard captain's salary. One elf comments that skill is what matters, and Johan agrees. Johan thinks he's never seen gold coins and considers changing careers. As he chats, an imposing figure approaches from behind. A warrior in full armor stops before him. Johan feels an overwhelming presence and instinctively moves his hand to his sword. He prepares to draw his weapon, then he stops, sweating, wondering why he tried to unsheath his sword. An elf points his sword at Johan, accusing him of disrespect for trying to draw his weapon before Sir Karamov. With a gesture, the warrior interrupts him, saying it's fine. Mounted on his horse, he asks who Johan is. Johan remains silent for a moment. Surrounded by the other soldiers' swords, he introduces himself as Johan of House Eitz. The warrior reaches for his helmet. He removes it, revealing himself to be Karamov, an Imperial Guard Knight of the Holy Empire. Johan realizes he instinctively placed his hand on his sword. He's never felt like this before, not even facing the Black Wolf or when his father tried to kill him. His killing intent is suffocating. It's like being prey placed before a relentless predator. Karamov merely orders him to move out of the way. He remains paralyzed under the pressure. Finally, he manages to move aside. The elves comment on how scared Johan looks. As they depart, one warns him to be careful next time, if there is a next time. A knight in training, Jane, asks Sir Karamov if it's okay to just leave him there. Karamov replies that he doesn't want to cause trouble on a day like this. He adds, "Not yet," as Johan watches the group enter the gate. Alone, he wonders why an emperor's knight would be there. A man runs, hearing Sir Karamov has arrived. Philip Eitz rushes through the halls. Why would such an important figure come here? Out of breath, he introduces himself as the next Lord Eitz and asks why he visited. Madame Eitz interrupts. She praises Karamov and introduces her son, John, as the true future lord. She continues, saying if she'd known of his existence, she would have married later. She invites him into the castle. Karamov ignores her and keeps walking. The madame calls after him unanswered. He sets his helm aside. Sitting on a throne, Karamov asks where Gessen is. The Eitz family watches from below. Philip scolds him. It's improper to address Lord Gessen that way, but Madame Eitz argues. As the Empire's greatest knight, he can do as he pleases. She will handle the reception. Philip clenches his fists. She's trying to use this chance to promote her son as the next lord. Karamov grabs his sword hilt and shouts for silence. He orders everyone out and demands alcohol. Holding his weapon, he declares he'll wait inside the castle for Gessen's arrival. During the night, Johan trains with his master, blocking blows. He gets distracted, remembering Karamov's arrival. Kegel scolds him and throws daggers, telling him to focus. The youth dodges the attacks with his sword, but one blade grazes his neck. His master warns him. He'd be dead if the daggers were poisoned. Why isn't he concentrating? Johan explains. The Emperor's knights arrived at the village. Something feels wrong. He continues. This is Eitz family territory. They shouldn't be allowed to close the gates and control entry like that. Kegel asks what he can do about it, suspicious or not. He describes Karamov, the Emperor's direct knight, the strongest warrior on the continent, wearing legendary armor. Johan asks if Karamov is stronger than him. The master is silent for a moment. Then he speaks. If he had to face Karamov, he would flee without hesitation. Kegel interrupts himself and tells him to be quiet. Kegel yells that he's an idiot. He should know his place. He can't even control his own strength. Johan just closes his eyes for a moment. Then he stands, sword in hand, and states he will do it. His master sighs and calls him to combat. The two charge each other at high speed. Johan is hit by the scabbard but yells to continue. He is struck again and insists they try again. Even hit repeatedly, he doesn't give up. Kegel also shouts for him to advance again. The youth wonders why it isn't working. He can't understand why he can't cut a simple scabbard. Then he remembers the teaching about the flow of force. He shouldn't just swing the sword, but concentrate power at its tip. While swinging the weapon, Johan slowly began to understand what controlling his strength meant. Kegel notices the dull sound of his sword becoming sharper. Johan crosses his sword with his master's scabbard in a powerful strike. He realizes something. If he combines everything he's learned so far, with the right amount of force, he can do it. Kegel senses the next attack will be dangerous. Then he attacks with a precise, swift movement. His blade cuts the air, and he manages to cut the tip of Kegel's scabbard. Johan celebrates the feat excitedly. He shouts that he did it, and now understands the feeling, saying it wasn't that hard. Kegel just watches, thinking it must have been luck. The master then calls him by name, and he responds promptly. Kegel draws his sword. He warns that this time he won't hold back. Johan advances again with full force. The impact of the blow throws Kegel backward. Johan jumps for joy, celebrating another victory. Kegel wonders what kind of boy he is. He is amazed. Johan can use the secret sword technique, Serpent's Tongue, even though he was only taught to control force. Johan absorbed the technique perfectly after seeing it only briefly on the first day they met, and now he is using it more perfectly than the master himself. Kegel remains silent for a moment. The old assassin's experience tells him something. Unless a miracle happens, Johan has already become someone he cannot defeat. Kegel, master of the Empire's strongest assassin guild, Nasos Poison, murmurs softly. He calls Johan an absurd boy, while the youth celebrates learning the technique. That night, Kegel announces his teachings are over. He will leave at dawn. Johan questions the decision, but his master states he already has everything necessary. He admits it. In less than a week, Johan became stronger than him. Kegel says he is satisfied his swordsmanship won't disappear and advises him to live as he wishes. He says Johan Eitz has worked hard until now. Sitting around a campfire, Johan asks the reason for leaving. He responds it's just his way. Then Johan questions him about the Black Wolf. Kegel confirms it is a sinister sign. Johan says he found the Black Wolf recently. He dreamed his head was cut off, so he thought his master was the omen. Kegel responds that if he had killed him, that would have been the sign. Misfortune has no fixed form. He then says he will give him advice before leaving. The first advice is to find a weapon suitable for his strength. It would need to be Dana's steel to withstand his power. Dana's steel is a legendary metal imbued with magic. Its creation method was lost. It can only be mined from ancient ruins, making weapons made from it extremely rare. Johan asks why recommend it if he can't afford it. Kegel replies it was just so he'd know what to look for. Kegel warns him, if he ever sees someone using a Dana's steel weapon, even from afar, he must run without looking back. He warns him that if he doesn't know his limits, he won't live long. Johan agrees to remember that. The master stands to leave. Johan asks if he's going already. Kegel advises him not to fight opponents he cannot beat, and to use every means necessary to kill if needed. He states that if Johan follows this rule, he probably won't die, and as final advice, asks him not to die. Johan watches his master move away through the dark forest, remembering his words about fleeing or killing, and finally, that he must always survive. Johan promises he will remember those words. Meanwhile, at the Eitz castle, Madame Eitz asks Karamov if the alcohol pleases him. He responds the drink tastes like rotten urine and orders her to take it away. She then breaks the bottle with her fan. She comments it was an expensive drink he didn't like. Madame Eitz states the only better drink is in Lord Gezen's room. She suggests he move to a more comfortable room as he must be tired from the trip. She continues, saying Lord Gezen's room is very comfortable. He won't be disappointed. Then she suggests the two could have fun together. Karamov simply orders her to disappear. Madame Eitz insists. Lord Gezen will arrive late, and they don't have much time. Karamov's expression changes. He declares he was getting sick of that. He will have fun. A scream echoes through the room. Karamov holds the madam by the neck, talking about the entertainment known as massacre. Philip peeks through a crack in the door and is terrified by the scene. Returning, Johan stops at the top of a hill. He looks forward and wonders what that is. The village and castle are in flames. He questions why everything is burning. Gezen Eitz rides with his men and questions why smoke rises from his property. One of his men warns the fire seems large. He should return immediately. Then the horse bolts at high speed. He arrives at the gates of his property. The guards mock him for being slow and hurry him inside. They warn him that Sir Karamov isn't a very patient person. Gezen faces the scene before him. The courtyard is littered with the bodies of his men and servants. Their lifeless faces are scattered across the ground. He then looks up at the figure ahead. A person in armor steps forward. Sir Karamov greets him, saying he is late. Gezen questions what he is doing as his hand goes to his axe handle. He draws his weapon and demands to know what Karamov thinks he's doing. Karamov accuses him of high treason and attempted assassination of the emperor. He announces that House Eitz will be eradicated by decree. Gezen Eitz shouts that this is a purge. They are only falsely accusing him to execute him. He then advances against Karamov, declaring he won't let him do whatever he wants. Sir Karamov simply orders the trumpet sounded and gives the order to recover the Eitz family seal and purge everyone in the territory. A soldier raises the trumpet to his mouth as the final order is given to wipe that land off the map. The Imperial army advances shouting. Amidst the burning village, a soldier approaches an injured villager. The man kneeling on the ground calls him a cruel bastard. Then the soldier asks if it's so hard to say where the pig's son is hiding. He decides to send him to his god. But the moment he attacks, Johan Eitz appears to block the blow. The young man cuts the soldier with his sword. The villager watches blood spray. He looks up and recognizes his savior as Lord Johan. Johan helps him up and asks what is happening. The man replies that Imperial troops are killing every villager they see. Father Valberg then adds that it's possible Lord Gezen has already been killed too. Johan Eitz receives the news about his father. Father Valberg adds they are burning the whole village to exterminate everything. The youth realizes he must return to the castle. Then he hears a familiar voice nearby. He turns and walks toward the sound while Valberg calls him. Johan finds little Dell on the floor and asks if it's her. He tells the child she is safe now and calls her close. Suddenly he perceives imminent danger. Dell points behind him, stuttering that her father was hit. Johan turns to look. The father who once protected and smiled at his daughter is now fallen on the ground, lifeless. Johan sees the bodies of more villagers around him. The family that once greeted him cheerfully is now dead on the ground. The men he drank and laughed with were also killed. He grits his teeth. Dell clings to his cape. Johan tells Dell it's dangerous to be alone and to stay with Father Valberg. The girl agrees. Then he turns and walks toward the flames while Valberg asks where he's going. Valberg, holding Dell, yells that he mustn't go and needs to flee. Johan stops walking upon hearing his name called. He looks up at an imperial standard with a head impaled on top. It is the head of his father, Gazen Eitz. A wooden sign announces Duke Gazen Eitz was executed for treason against the emperor. It warns that anyone who takes his body will be punished for the same crime. Signed by Karamov. A nearby soldier recognizes him. He asks if he isn't the bastard's son. The man mocks, thinking he had fled. He asks if he came back to die. Johan draws his sword in a quick movement. He cuts the standard pole, which falls to the ground and is trampled. The soldier yells at the others not to stand there and to kill him now. Johan stares at them. Then he advances and cuts down the soldiers. The last soldier falls to the ground. Johan stands alone amidst the destruction of his village. He wonders why he is doing this and why he is returning to the castle. He remembers Father Valberg's warning to flee, agreeing he should be running. Returning to the castle to face Karamov would just mean dying for no reason. Suddenly, he hears someone call his name. He finds Philip Eitz wounded among the bodies of other knights. Philip recognizes him and says he is alive. Philip asks why he came back. He warns him to leave, for he will die if he stays. Philip then removes his helm, saying he wanted to give it to him when Johan became lord. Johan holds the helm in his hands. He grits his teeth. A memory of his master instructing him to understand the difference in skill level comes to mind. He also advised him to run if it got dangerous. Even with the warning that the opponent was an emperor's knight, Johan decides. He remembers his master's words, "If you must fight, you must kill." Johan puts on the helm, stating the time is now. He then stands up. The youth enters the castle gates. He faces a group of imperial soldiers. The soldiers wonder how he got in and where the guards are. Johan clenches his fist and calls for Karamov. He advances against the men, yelling for the bastard to come out. The youth steps firmly on the stone floor. He stands still in his full armor. Blood drips from his sword. Sir Karamov finally appears, commenting that Eitz's fugitive son survived. He recognizes him as Johan Eitz, the man who was in front of the castle earlier. Johan states he's not in the mood to swap names. Johan just tells Karamov to think of him as a very angry man. Karamov tells Johan he should have kept running to live, guessing he doesn't care about his own life. Karamov then accepts the imminent confrontation. With his sword in hand, he challenges Johan to attack if he wants to die. Johan replies that wasn't necessary to say. It was exactly what he intended to do anyway. Johan advances. His sword clashes against Karamov's amidst the flames. Their blades press against each other. Johan tries a sideways strike, but Karamov blocks the attack with his strength. The swords slide against one another. Karamov then disarms him with a powerful blow. Johan's sword flies away and he leaps back to dodge. He lands and prepares again. Karamov says this is fun. Johan's swords break repeatedly into multiple pieces. The blades float in the air around him. Johan observes the weapon fragments. Karamov advances and attacks with his sword. The blow descends in a wide arc. A stone pillar is cut in half. Karamov finds the situation interesting. He comments that Johan is much stronger than Brits ever was. Then Karamov spots one of his soldiers. He rips the man's head off and throws it, declaring that this is truly fun. He demands that Eitz's bastard son entertain him more. Johan recovers and blocks the next attack. His block cracks Karamov's armor. He seizes the opportunity to counterattack. His blade cuts Karamov's arm. Karamov retreats a few steps. The two face each other at a distance. Karamov looks at his arm, questioning how Johan managed to cut his Danis steel armor. Karamov observes the damage on his gauntlet. Johan tightens his grip on his sword hilt. Karamov considers it impossible for a human to damage Danis steel and questions his identity. Then the youth lifts his sword again for attack. The blades clash hard. Karamov is surprised by his strength, but Johan continues his attack with a downward strike. Karamov blocks the attack with his sword. He presses with another powerful blow. Karamov judges him a brute with strength who only swings the sword without technique. He prepares for a counterattack. He deflects Johan's blow to the side. Then Karamov advances with a thrust. Johan dodges sharply, confirming he can't defend against the simple attack. Karamov realizes Johan fights only on instinct, with no technique, and wonders if Gazen never taught him to fight. He considers him a dangerous opponent and decides he needs to end the fight quickly. Karamov prepares for Johan's next wide blow. Karamov parries Johan's blow, but the blade digs deep against his own. With both hands, Johan pushes the sword forward, but Karamov manages to deflect the blow. The youth challenges him to attack, stating Karamov's head will roll. Karamov then perceives something unexpected in Johan's movement. Johan manages to hold Karamov's blade with his own hands. A serpent shape emerges from his arm. He then hits Karamov's face with a direct punch. The blow throws him back with force. The impact of the punch destroys part of his armor. Karamov spits blood. His sword falls and hits the stone floor. He retreats, holding his mouth. Then he recognizes the technique as Kagal's assassination swordsmanship. He realizes Johan Eitz was hiding his true ability. His eyes widen. He curses himself for lowering his guard. His body bends forward while more blood comes from his mouth. A puddle forms on the floor. He straightens up and faces Johan. The youth watches him closely. Johan removes his helm and then asks why he did all that. Karamov responds everything was for his imperial majesty. He explains the empire is unstable, so His Majesty drew the imperial sword to correct it. The sword, known as Mavkara, is mentioned by him. Karamov leans on his sword, coughing, while Johan stands before him. Then Karamov begins to laugh and declares he is moved by Johan Eitz. He says that for decades he fought countless knights but never found anyone so strong. Karamov invites him to go with him to the Empire. He states His Majesty needs strong talent like him now. He promises the Empire's infinite gold, glory, and vast fertile lands. The Emperor himself will name him an Imperial Knight. He encourages him to become the Emperor's sword. Johan remains silent before the offer of infinite gold. He turns his face away. He looks up and says that was the life he dreamed of one day, but now he feels nothing. Then, he simply refuses. Karamov questions what he said. Johan confronts him for killing his family, and also innocent servants who did nothing wrong. Karamov repeats the word servants, then questions if he is rejecting his offer because of servants. He grinds his teeth. Then Karamov yells, asking who cares about their deaths, and calls them insects. Karamov declares the strong drink the blood of the weak, and that is the law of the world. Johan remains silent before his words. He clenches his fist and apologizes to his master, saying he cannot control his strength. The youth then advances and hits his face with a punch. The impact of the blow strikes Karamov's head. Johan keeps his fist clenched. He attacks again, yelling about it being for the Emperor. The second punch hits the side of Karamov's head. He continues the attack, yelling about worthless lives. Karamov's eye reflects the approaching blow. Johan yells, asking what makes him think he is so grand. He then demands to know who gave him the right to judge who lives and who dies. Johan lands a final punch on Karamov's face. His eye widens with the impact of the blow. Blood spurts from his face. His hand twitches on the floor. Johan lowers his bloody fist. He stands over Karamov's fallen body. Then he turns to walk away. Karamov calls him a fool. He says he should have accepted his offer. And now it is too late for the one who broke the Emperor's sword. Now will know only suffering from now on. Johan stares at him as Karamov's finger falls lifeless. His body then dissolves. Johan reflects that to survive in a world that accepts death, all he thought about was money. But now, he clenches his fist. Everyone in the territory was massacred, and his family and neighbors were killed and burned. Even if the whole world becomes his enemy, he walks among the bodies, for he only did what needed to be done. He will never regret what he did, no matter what they say, for this is now the way he lives. Fortress gates groan open under the night sky. A guard clears the path. Jane and her retinue of elves enter the courtyard. She turns to a wounded soldier, asking one final time if his report is true. The soldier swears there is no lie in his words, begging her to believe him. He recounts how the man breached the area and battered every soldier. Then, with his bare hands, took Sir Karamov's head. The soldier concludes that was the last time they saw Sir Karamov. Jane looks at the bodies on the ground and asks why her corpse isn't there. She demands to know how she can believe such a story without proof. The man replies that he doesn't understand that part either, but he saw it happen. Another elf approaches, informing Master Jane the pursuit group is ready. She confirms she'll be there soon. Jane stalks across the courtyard. She stands before her troops, then gives the order to hunt him down and kill him. Jane announces the target is Johan Eitz. Johan runs through the forest as the sun sets. She accuses him of being a traitor to his bloodline and suspect in Sir Karamov's murder. The young man keeps fleeing through the woods, carrying Philip on his shoulders. Jane shouts for her men to hunt him, kill him if necessary, but bring him back. Soldiers surround him in the dark forest. An elf falls to his sword. Johan cuts a path through the troops. The commander warns that he can rip through Danis' steel. Never face him alone. Treat this like a dragon hunt. She orders all territorial roads closed. to pursue him relentlessly until he breaks. Her soldiers react to news of Sir Karamov's death. Jane holds her gaze steady. She declares they must bring that bastard's head to Her Majesty. A memory of a wounded Philip surfaces, telling him to listen closely. He instructs him to go to his stable, take a warhorse, and flee, insisting he must survive at all costs. Still carrying Philip, Johan reaches the stable, exhausted, thinking it was the end. He looks over his shoulder, gasping. Hiding Karamov's body didn't cause the expected chaos. The pursuit group moved faster than he anticipated. He decides to keep carrying Philip, using the armor as a shield until he loses them completely. He struggles to stand and prepares to move on. He opens the stable door. Inside, he recognizes Gazen's warhorse. Johan thanks his brother. He strokes the horse, saying that with its help, he might get some rest. He decides to name the animal. The horse stares at him. He names it Philip. An elf soldier shouts that he saw the glint of Dana's steel and orders a search of the area. He asserts the bastard is definitely close. A guard claims to have heard hoofbeats. Johan bursts through the forest on horseback, surprising the soldiers. He clings to the body in his arms as he charges. A soldier identifies him as Johan Eitz and yells that he's escaping on horseback. He rides rapidly into the forest's darkness. The elf commander orders his men to bring him down. Do not let him escape. Soldiers fire crossbows at him. Arrows strike the armor of the body Johan uses as a shield. He disappears among the moonlit trees. Johan rode through the night, quickly losing the pursuit group. He reached the depths of the Black Forest. He stops, saying that even though Philip was a twisted man, leaving him unburied feels wrong. Johan looks back. He notes Philip's armor, commenting that it looks expensive. He takes the sword from the body. Johan examines it, realizing the blade is light, solid, and made of Dana's steel. He unsheathes it and inspects the inscriptions. He recognizes ancient imperial script reading, "I am the one who reclaims crests." He repeats the name, Crest Reclaimer. He wonders if it refers to reclaiming family crests, finding the name ominous. He decides to take the sword and bury the armor. It's a waste, but he promises to return for it later. Carrying it won't help now. He begins digging a grave. He drives the shovel into the ground. After burying the body and gear, he questions if it's enough. The image of Karamov, the Emperor's knight, comes to mind. He knows once the news spreads, the entire empire will hunt him, along with Karamov's knights seeking revenge. Her threat that he would only know suffering echoes in his thoughts. He reflects that his life was suffering long before he killed her. With House Eitz burned and penniless, he wonders what to do now and decides to rest. Suddenly, he hears a growl from the darkness and turns. A giant black wolf appears before Johan Eitz. He faces the creature. The young man stands, exhausted, lamenting the animal's arrival when he's completely drained. He knows he has no chance in this condition. He can barely hold his sword. His only hope is to reach the horse and escape. But a voice nearby shouts that they found his horse. Soldiers capture the warhorse, claiming he must be close. Johan recognizes the wolves of Akitan and realizes they've caught up. An elf points toward him, saying he heard something from that direction. The pursuit group aims crossbows into the darkness. He is cornered. A monster in front, the pursuers behind. With nowhere to run, he wonders if this is the end. Then, the wolf leaps over him. It attacks the elven soldiers from behind. The black wolf slaughters the elves. A soldier screams for help as the creature mauls him. Johan watches, wondering why the monster missed him. He realizes the animal is clearing a path. This is his chance. Knowing he'll die if he doesn't move, he prepares to run. He grits his teeth and charges. The young man runs to his horse. He mounts the saddle. He snaps the reins and takes off at high speed. He gallops away. Images of childhood flash through his mind. The priest teaching him to write. Time spent with his brother. Johan keeps riding. He remembers his youth and training. He remembers slaughtered villagers as he rides away from his homeland. The memory of his brother handing him the helm before dying surfaces. He leaves behind the ruins of his home, Eitz village. The lifeless body of an elven soldier lies on the ground. The black wolf stands guard over the soldiers it killed. The creature watches Johan disappear onto the horizon. Soldiers patrol a dirt road. Columns of smoke rise in the distance. Hidden in the brush, Johan realizes his escape route is gone. It's completely blocked by a checkpoint. He slumps against his horse, utterly exhausted. He hasn't eaten or slept properly since making his escape. For 3 straight days, the young man has been hunted mercilessly by the soldiers of Akitan. Johan has lost count of how many times he's nearly died defending against group attacks. He's reached his limit. He barely has the strength to lift his own sword. In the distance, More guards block the only exit. He has nowhere left to go. Crouched low, he keeps watching the soldiers moving along the path. Suddenly, a merchant caravan with an armed escort appears on the road. An idea strikes him. Johan decides he will disguise himself as a merchant. He'll use the group to get through the checkpoint without raising suspicion. At the caravan, a man addresses Sir Eldons of the Katana Trading Company. Eldons asks what it is. The mercenary beside him points nervously down the road. A heavily armed rider appears before them. Khan, the mercenary leader, suggests they prepare for a fight. The mercenary Gamson questions why they are so worried about a single knight. Goran tells him to look closely. The man wears full plate armor and rides a war horse. Furthermore, he's wearing a plate helm and a metal breastplate. Khan grabs Gamson's head, ordering him to look at the sword at the knight's waist. The weapon's hilt reveals it was forged from Danish steel. It could cut through their armor easily. The young mercenary still doubts they could lose, since there are 9 of them. One of the men shoves him aside, annoyed that he can't think straight with him around. Another mercenary smacks him on the head, telling him to shut his mouth if he doesn't know anything. Eldons orders Goran and Khan to ready everyone to attack at the slightest suspicious movement. He announces he'll check the situation first. They should all attack on his signal. Both mercenaries confirm the order. Then Eldon steps down from the wagon and approaches the knight. As he walks, Khan instructs his men to knock the target off his horse the moment the fight starts. The merchant introduces himself as Eldons of the Katana Company. He asks for the knight's name to avoid misunderstandings. Johan, disguised under his helm, is surprised to see that he is a catman. Eldons observes his mercenaries ready for combat. Johan senses the distrust. He decides he needs to make the catman lower his guard, so he introduces himself as Johan and explains that his appearance is due to a bandit attack. He asks Eldons to tell his men not to attack him. The merchant apologizes. He justifies it by saying that as a seller, he must always be prepared for the worst. Johan says he understands the situation. He then asks if he can travel with the group, as he lost all his money in the attack. In exchange for a little food and a place to sleep, he offers to help protect the caravan. Eldons evaluates the proposal and finally agrees to the deal. He informs him they are on their way to Marseille and suggests Johan get acquainted with the mercenaries. The young man thanks him, though he doesn't know where the destination lies. Walking away, Eldons explains to his men that Johan is just a wanderer, but they should keep an eye on him, and if anything happens, he orders them not to hesitate to kill him. The mercenaries confirm the order. Now, Johan only needs to worry about getting past the checkpoint. The caravan then resumes its journey along the road. One of the soldiers at the checkpoint alerts the others that people are approaching. The wolves of Akiton then order the caravan to stop for a brief inspection. Johan finally reaches his obstacle, hoping to pass unnoticed. Eldon steps forward and introduces himself, asking to speak directly with the person in charge. The guard recognizes the Katana Trading Company, which has its main headquarters in Marseille. He greets the merchant and explains that they are just following orders to search for a fugitive trader. Johan understands that the checkpoint was set up specifically to capture him. One of the soldiers approaches him and demands he remove his helm to show his face. He invents an excuse, saying he has a skin condition. The guards mock him and insist that he show his face anyway. The group leader questions if the knight is hiding something. The two then stare at each other in a moment of tension. Johan prepares for the worst and places his hand on the hilt of his sword. However, the discussion is interrupted by a voice. Eldon shouts at the soldiers, asking if they dare suspect his company and demanding to see the commander. He then threatens the guard, saying that if there is further interference, he will make a direct complaint to the captain. He specifies that the complaint will be filed personally at the Marseille branch. The guard then yields and orders his men to clear the path for them. The other soldiers show frustration with their superior's decision. The group leader approaches Johan and says he got lucky. The caravan finally passes the checkpoint and continues on its way. The young knight looks back one last time. The soldiers just watch the group move away down the road. By dusk, the mercenaries are gathered around the campfire to organize watch shifts. In his tent, Eldons checks a scroll. He then approaches Johan and dismisses him to go to sleep, since he has no tasks. The young man thanks one of the mercenaries. A sleeping bag is thrown on the ground for him. Johan sits down, finally ready to rest. He then falls into a deep sleep beside the campfire. A man watches the full moon through the trees. Another emerges from the darkness of the vegetation. He then orders everyone to get ready. The plan is to surround them by the hill and attack everyone at once. In a dream, Sergeant Kim Johan recalls his days in the military. During a tactical training exercise, he successfully executed a defense-in-depth strategy against a superior enemy force. His remarkable tactical prowess became a shining example for his fellow soldiers. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Kim Yibok awarded him a medal and a 5-day leave. The young sergeant salutes his superior. He celebrates inwardly, thinking military life truly suits him. But the outdated culture and grueling shifts soon changed his mind. Worst of all was the abysmal pay. That was what made him decide to run away. In his nightmare, he's being dragged back to base. Johan jolts awake. He sits up. Realizing it was just a dream, he takes a deep breath, still shaking off the fright. The army dream ruined his sleep, and now his whole body aches. He glances to the side. The moon still illuminates the camp. Suddenly, a rain of arrows begins to fall. Johan braces for impact. With a lightning-fast movement, he catches an arrow just inches from his face. He realizes the soldiers have found him again. Annoyed at being discovered, he stands up, deciding he needs to warn the mercenaries first. He shouts, alerting everyone to the enemy ambush. Eldons and the others are jolted awake by the sudden warning. The scene flashes back to 5 minutes before the attack. Kan was complaining to Gamson, asking why they were the only ones busting their backs while the new knight did nothing. He tells the young mercenary to shut his mouth. The leader explains they can't trust guard duty to a stranger who might kill them in their sleep and steal their supplies. He warns him that if he keeps being so reckless, he won't last long in this line of work. Kan turns to continue his patrol. Gamson reveals he became a mercenary to live like a real man, but he gripes that if he'd known the Goran mercenaries were a bunch of cowards, he never would have joined up. Kan turns back to Gamson and asks what he just said. The two mercenaries stare each other down in the dark forest. Suddenly, the shout of "Ambush!" interrupts them. Arrows begin raining down rapidly. Kan shoves Gamson to the ground, shielding him with his own body. When the arrow barrage finally stops, he lifts his head. He orders Gamson to go get the others immediately, but the young mercenary bolts in the opposite direction. Kan watches him flee until someone calls his name. Goran runs over, relieved to find him alive, and warns him about the attack. The mercenary asks about Gamson, but quickly shifts focus to Eldon's safety. He reports the merchant is hiding under the wagon, and they need to prepare for a fight. Johan approaches and orders them to form a defensive perimeter around the wagon. He explains they need to fight together, as they don't know where the attack will come from. Goran questions him, asking if he thinks he's their employer. Kan tells Johan they'll look after themselves. The young man should just worry about his own survival. The knight is surprised by the response. Goran then rallies the mercenaries, ordering everyone to grab their shields and prepare for battle. Johan approaches Kan, stating he's been in similar fights before and asking for a shield to help. Suddenly, Eldons denies the request, saying there aren't enough shields and he'll have to fend for himself. He turns away, realizing the mercenaries don't trust him. His eyes widen as the enemy approaches. A massive band of bandits emerges from the forest darkness. Johan notices these aren't the wolves of Aquitaine, just common thieves. Kan shouts for all units to advance. The mercenaries charge into the forest to engage the enemy. Left behind, Johan wonders who's going to protect the wagon. The mercenaries and bandits clash intensely. The thief leader urges his men to use their numerical advantage. Goran defends himself, shouting for his comrades to hold their position. Retreat means death. A bandit lands a solid punch on Goran's face. Kan screams his captain's name. The bandit raises his dagger over Goran, ready to finish him off. Johan clenches his fist, deciding to intervene. With a swift motion, he draws his sword. A thief turns, surprised by the sudden action. Another nearby bandit is also confused by what's happening. From the ground, Goran watches the scene unfold. In a flash, Johan slices one of the enemies in half. The bandit's blood runs down the blade of his sword. Johan notices the runes on the weapon are absorbing the blood. One of the bandits shouts that the enemy has a demon sword and can't be defeated. Johan introduces himself as Johan of House Yates, and demands to know who they are to attack him. Kan and Goran are stunned to discover he's a noble. He only slightly altered his real name from Eitz to Yates. The bandits whisper amongst themselves, realizing they're in deep trouble for attacking a noble from a prominent house. Johan demands they answer his question. He points his sword at the leader, asking if they will surrender now, or if they'd prefer to meet their end by his blade. The noble warns them to consider their decision carefully. The bandit leader just breathes heavily, offering no response. Then, one of the thieves throws his sword to the ground. Soon the others follow suit with their weapons. Hands raised, the leader finally announces their surrender. Johan sheathes his sword. He turns to Goran, ordering him to tie up the prisoners and authorizing him to kill anyone who resists. Goran approaches Sir Eldons, asking what they should do now. He worries the noble might hold a grudge for his earlier mistreatment, since they thought he was just a well-equipped drifter. But Eldons reassures him, saying he'll handle the situation. The fact they let him join in the first place counts as goodwill. The merchant approaches Johan, commenting on his difficult night. He thanks him for protecting the caravan, saying he doesn't know how he can ever repay the favor. Johan places a hand on his shoulder, stating the most important thing is everyone's safety. The Catman is surprised he isn't demanding compensation. With that, the young noble steps away, but he turns back and requests that next time, they lend him a shield. Eldons agrees immediately, promising he'll be the first to get one. Johan then mentions his plan to interrogate the prisoners and asks for the mercenaries' assistance. Goran suggests that now his status is known. Speaking to the prisoners more formally would put everyone at ease. A mercenary shoves one of the captured thieves forward. He is quickly forced to kneel before Johan. The noble approaches, asking who he is and why he attacked them. The leader reveals they are private soldiers of the annihilated House Brits. Months ago, House Brits was suddenly attacked on charges of treason against the emperor. The ones responsible for massacring their territory were the wolves of a kitten. They resisted desperately, but were defeated and forced to retreat when the noble executioner joined the fray. A mercenary beside Johan confirms it was likely him, Karamov, the emperor's hunting dog. The bandit leader bows, apologizing for committing a capital offense. He explains the imperial army hunted them as rebels, and the northerners turned their backs on them, branding them deserters. While he can't justify banditry, they had to do something to survive. Johan asks if there was any other motive for the attack. The man denies it, stating their only reason for attacking was the caravan's obvious wealth. Eldons becomes furious, shouting that trading company deliveries are built on trust. Johan asks a mercenary to restrain him, ordering Sir Eldons to calm down. He reflects on the treason against the emperor, remembering Karamov saying it was all for him. Finally, he understands the situation. Johan concludes there never was any treason. It was merely a pretext for the emperor to purge the nobles using Karamov. Johan curses the emperor, wishing him the most horrible death imaginable. He realizes the bandits are in a similar situation to his own, also victims of those in power. Yet they became bandits, and the young noble isn't sure how to handle them. Khan approaches asking for orders, offering to beat more information out of them. Johan refuses, saying they already know everything they need to. Suddenly, Gamson returns, charging in to beat one of the prisoners to death. The tied-up prisoner manages to block the young mercenary's attack. Khan steps in, grabbing Gamson's weapon before he can strike again. Gamson turns, demanding to know why he's being stopped. The mercenary leader states they have no right to punish the prisoners, especially him, after he abandoned his comrades and ran away. The young mercenary just indifferently accepts the situation. The bandit leader begs Sir Johan to spare their lives, promising to never do wrong again. The other prisoners cower on the ground in fear. Khan offers to execute them all immediately given the order. Johan grips the hilt of his sword, pondering his options. He decides the mercenaries should disarm them and let them go. The bandit leader gives thanks, but Gamson questions why he's sparing their lives. The young noble turns to the prisoners, telling them to listen closely. He says he understands their circumstances, but robbing caravans is unacceptable. Johan reveals that, like them, he only learned skills in order to survive. Eldons is surprised to hear a noble talk about learning survival skills. A mercenary points to Goran, stating he's only there because the pay is good. The noble shouts for them to learn new skills and find an honest way to make a living. The bandit leader bows in gratitude, promising they will never forget his mercy. Johan tells the group they need to move out too. He doesn't want to get caught up in more trouble. In the distance, a shadowy creature watches them from a hilltop. The figure rises in the darkness, revealing itself to be a wolf with glowing red eyes. The group decides to rest in a small place called Rootspur before continuing to Marcel. The village chief is informed that Sir Eldons of the Katana Trading Company has arrived. He goes to meet the merchant in the village courtyard. Eldons greets him enthusiastically, saying it's been months. The chief welcomes him back and asks if anything happened on the road. The merchant recounts encountering a band of bandits, remarking that things have gotten worse since the emperor went mad. He is immediately reprimanded, saying that could cause trouble if an imperial loyalist heard. But Eldons explains everything worked out thanks to an incredibly brave noble traveling with them. The chief mentions a fake noble came through weeks ago, but he beat the man and threw him out of the village. The Catman just laughs, noting his friend still acts recklessly when he loses his temper. Eldons assures him this one is different. This noble is brave, honest, and protected them from the bandits. He even refused any reward, shocking the village chief. The chief realizes having that knight around would be a huge help against bandits. In these times, a good knight is vital for public safety. With that in mind, he invites the group to stay for a few weeks and rest. Eldons refuses, but the chief insists their relationship allows for such favors. Eldons jokes that the chief is trying to steal his companion, and the chief laughs. The chief then asks where the noble is. Currently, he sits alone in a corner. He is starving, looking like a beggar about to die in the street. Goran approaches and calls for Sir Johan, who asks what he wants. The mercenary offers him a cloth bag full of coins confiscated from the bandits. He explains they sold all the bandits' goods and weapons for a decent sum. The young noble asks if he took any for himself, but the mercenary denies it, saying Johan was the one who captured them. Johan stares at the money in his helmet for a moment. Then he hands a larger bag to Goran, ordering him to split it among his men. The mercenary refuses, saying it's too much and the spoils should be his, but Johan insists. He shows that he already took his share, holding just a few coins in his hand. The noble reassures him it's fine. He knows spending a little money to keep the mercenary band loyal is better than facing the wolves of a chitin alone. Besides, he didn't fight alone. Johan declares that having fought together makes them comrades in arms, hoping the gesture creates a bond of trust. He bids the mercenary farewell and walks away. Goran watches him go, recognizing the true dignity of a knight who cares for his subordinates. The mercenary turns to gather his men. He announces that Sir Johan has shown them great generosity. Goran explains the noble distributed the profits from the war spoils and orders everyone to form a line. The other mercenaries are stunned, questioning if he's really giving away money that should be his. They exchange disbelieving looks. The surprise quickly turns into celebration as the group begins cheering Johan's name throughout the village. Later, in an inn, the young noble sleeps deeply, his sword beside him. His room door begins to slowly creak open. The candle flame beside the bed is suddenly snuffed out. Johan continues to sleep, oblivious to the presence in the room. A pair of red eyes watches him from the darkness. A masked figure leans over him, holding a dagger. The night before the attack, a man announces that Sir Johan has been generous and will distribute the spoils of war so everyone gets their share. With the news, the crowd of men erupts in celebration. Through the city streets, Johan walks as people all around shout his name. Even though he kept the most expensive items for himself, he still won the loyalty of his men. An older man approaches and asks if he is Sir Johan. Surprised, Johan asks if the stranger knows him, and receives the answer that he does, as he is the nobleman who came with Mr. Eldon's. The man then offers to take him to the best available room, explaining that the Katana Trading Company has already paid for all expenses. That payment was Eldon's way of settling his debt with him. Without objection, Johan agrees and asks the man to lead the way. Later, among the soldiers, one of them asks why only one man didn't get paid. The other explains that Gamson hid while everyone else fought, and for that, he will receive nothing. Hearing this, Gamson turns to the side. Suddenly, something in the distance catches his eye. Through the window, he sees Johan being led by the older man. The sight of the nobleman outside sparks an idea in his mind. Johan arrives at the inn, seeking rest. Inside the room, the man relaxes in a hot bath. Sinking his body into the water, he feels he can finally rest a little. A soft bed and a hot bath were simple things he never imagined could make him so happy. Before this, he didn't realize how hard it would be to live as a wanderer without a roof over his head. Even though he was born into a noble family, he had never reflected on the luxury of sleeping in an old bed. Everything changed when that mad emperor razed his territory to the ground. Besides him, many other people were also victims of that attack. Still, he survived, which perhaps put him in a better situation than most. Amid his thoughts, he wonders if he should have accepted Karamov's offer. At this rate, the Imperial Army will surely find and execute him. Because of this, he needs to think of another way out, until an idea suddenly strikes him. Those mercenaries could do nothing against Eldon's. A band of mercenaries wouldn't be afraid of a simple merchant, but of the company he belongs to. The memory takes him back to what he learned about trading companies in the village market when he was young. Companies connected to the same network share information and funds across borders. When they are powerful, they can influence politicians, nobles, or even a country's army. To survive the empire's persecution, he needs to get close to a trading company at any cost. Still, he decides to leave the more complex thoughts for later, preferring to fill his stomach and go to sleep. Outside, the night slowly moves on. Johan falls asleep in his bed, clutching his own sword. Without a sound, the bedroom door opens slowly. An assassin approaches him, holding a dagger in his hands. He reaches out to grab Johan's sword. Before he can touch it, the noble stops him, grabbing his wrist and asking if they ever get tired of this. The unexpected reaction startles the masked man. Sitting up in bed, Johan demands an answer. He then asks if he is one of Karamov's henchmen. Desperate, the assassin struggles and screams for him to let go. With no apparent effort, Johan throws him through the door. As he hits the floor, the man is grabbed by the leg. Desperate, he drags himself down the hall, begging for help. Too late, the attacker realizes the man he picked a fight with was not human. 5 minutes before the incident, the innkeeper was sleeping soundly at the reception desk. Meanwhile, 2 young men were climbing the stairs in complete silence. Gamson assures Pra that it's fine to leave the job in that guy's hands. Convinced, he states that Vulin, the strongest man in the village, is fast and won't get caught with the dagger and mask he took. At the same time, Pell, the horse fanatic, follows the plan and approaches a warhorse. Carefully, he mounts the animal and tells it to be quiet. Curious, Pra asks Gamson if the nobleman's sword is really that valuable. In response, Gamson asks if he has ever seen a sword capable of cutting a person in half. He says he witnessed that weapon split a soldier in two, and that something with so much power couldn't be cheap. Besides, that knight is nothing without his sword. Suddenly, the two of them peek down the hallway. Before them, they see the attacker on the floor, and the silhouette of Johan standing at the bedroom door. The injured man continues to scream for help. Silently, Gamson watches the scene. Frightened, Pra grabs him and asks what the hell is going on. Without hesitation, Gamson tells him to run if he wants to live. The feeling that something is very wrong takes over, and the certainty that they are doomed sets in. At that moment, the innkeeper appears and asks who they are and what they're up to. Outside, Pell waits with the horses. Seeing the others approaching, he comments that they finally arrived. Annoyed, Gamson yells at him to shut up and get ready to flee. He then turns to Pra and asks where Vulin is. With a trembling voice, Pra replies that he is either dead or about to die. Gamson orders everyone to get on their horses and escape, but Pra is still worried about Vulin. While Pell refuses to abandon him, Gamson warns that the noble might chase them. Suddenly, the inn's roof explodes. Amid the debris, Johan leaps toward them. On the outskirts of the Southern Holy Empire, hanging bodies swing from a lone tree. Nearby, a soldier hammers a wooden stake into the ground. After finishing, he turns to his companion and confirms that the job is done and the stake is firm. Then, the two of them nail up a warning notice stating that these people, along with their families, were hanged for stealing a nobleman's property. The decree bears the signature of the Holy Empire's emperor, Cardirian Bizalfurk. One of the soldiers asks what they could have possibly stolen to meet such a cruel end. In response, the other mentions hearing they had stolen a chicken and 3 eggs from Baron Gvorzob's territory. The information sounds absurd even to him, who can't believe the outcome. All of this happened because of such a small crime. Meanwhile, in a nearby tavern, the night is quiet. Seated at a table, Eldons enjoys a meal with a cup of tea. Shortly after, a man approaches and informs him there's a problem. He reports that Gamson, from the Mercenary band, was caught trying to steal the belongings of Sir Johan Yates. Hearing the news, Eldons jumps up from his chair, filled with disbelief. Moments later, he sits back down, lamenting the situation, as he had hoped to convince Sir Johan to travel with them to Marseille. With that, Eldons orders Gamson to be captured immediately, and for the rest of the group to pretend they had no involvement. The man obeys promptly, carefully observing the calm with which a merchant from the Katana Company handles a crisis. Alone again, Eldons tries to calm himself, confident he will overcome this problem as he has so many times before. He knows he won't die over something like this, but he still needs to think of a careful way to deal with this nobleman. Elsewhere, a village meeting is taking place. After standing up, the village chief announces the end of that night's meeting. Suddenly, a man runs in, shouting that the leader needs help. He informs them that the troublemakers were caught trying to steal from the nobleman. Annoyed, the village chief slams his fist on the table and calls them useless brats. One of those present asks what should be done, which only increases the leader's irritation. In response, he orders them to gather tributes to offer the noble, and to include one of the slaves kept in the village. He also demands they prepare to execute the troublemakers in front of the nobleman himself. Immediately, the youth's parents protest, stating they can't let their children die. Consumed by fury, the village chief picks up a stool, yells for everyone to shut up, and smashes it on the floor. He then bellows at the parents, asking if they don't understand the gravity of the situation, or if they've forgotten the emperor's decree. Screaming, he states they need to act before the noble does, as it's the only way for them to survive. The imperial decree stated that anyone who coveted a noble's possessions could have their tongue cut out, along with their families, or be sentenced to the gallows. In some places, entire families had already been wiped out because of that absurd decree. All this happened because they demanded a chicken and 3 eggs instead of unpaid wages. After all, to him, all nobles act the same way. The chief then turns to one of the mothers and asks what she thinks the noble their children messed with will do. After offending a noble, he will surely try to punish them somehow, perhaps even by having the entire village beheaded while lecturing about a knight's honor. One of the men argues that this territory belongs to Count Jerpin, and that regardless of the importance of that noble's house, they could ask the count for help. In response, the village chief states that nobles only care about their little games of honor, never about who lives or dies. Slamming the table, he yells for everyone to wake up. While the youth's parents cry, the others remain silent. The chief then asks if they really think he feels good about this. With regret, he laments having to sacrifice their children, but he states the village will survive if the young ones die, and this decision is for the good of all. Later, a crowd gathers under a large tree as the villagers approach. The 3 young men remain kneeling and tied on the ground, while a 4th man lies fallen beside them. Observing the scene, Johan realizes the situation has gotten out of hand, as they were just village boys who tried to steal his sword. It seems they did it upon noticing the weapon, leading him to decide he must keep it hidden from now on. Part of the blame, he admits, is his for carrying such a sword in the open, deciding just to scare them a little before letting them go. Seated in a chair, Johan waits amidst the crowd. Shortly after, the village chief approaches and asks if the Honorable Sir Johan is all right. Without hesitation, Johan replies that no, he is not all right. He then asks if it's the custom in the village of Rutspek to welcome guests by putting blades to their throats and looting their baggage. At this, the village chief throws himself on the ground and offers a sincere apology. Taking the blame, he states that he failed by not keeping those idiots in check. Johan warns one of the boys to be more careful next time and dismisses them all. Suddenly, the village chief pulls out a dagger. Raising the blade over one of the young men's heads, he declares that he will redeem himself by cutting off their heads for Johan's honor. Immediately, Johan holds out his hand and orders him to stop, making it clear that is not his intention. Still, the village chief insists that those who stained Sir Johan's honor deserve to die. Ignoring the order, he raises the dagger again to execute one of the youths. The boy's mother covers her face and apologizes to her son. However, the blade is stopped before it hits its target. Coldly, Johan asks if he didn't hear him say to stop. The village chief and the villagers turn their gazes to Johan. In complete silence, the entire crowd watches the scene. Johan stands up and asks if everyone has gone mad enough to kill people for such a trivial reason. Firmly, he states that if they want them to pay for their crimes, they should make them pay with money. At this, the crowd stares at Johan in silence. Realizing his suggestion might have sounded too obvious, he clears his throat and says he'll repeat himself. He then questions how honor can be more precious than human life, and orders them to untie the youths and get lost. The dagger slips from the village chief's hand and sticks into the ground. Overcome with admiration, the village leader kneels, impressed by Sir Johan's honorable decision. Relieved, Pra's parents run to hug him, happy to see him safe and sound. The village chief still can't believe a noble like that truly exists, confirming that Eldons was telling the truth. As a sign of gratitude, the mercenaries bow, thanking Sir Johan and promising never to forget his kindness. Gamson also apologizes, admitting he didn't realize how honorable the noble was and that he ended up being tricked by an idiot. As the other youths are untied, a man comments that they were lucky, as any other knight would have killed them. At that moment, the mercenary leader approaches Gamson, who urges him to untie him. Bitterly, Gamson laments having joined this unlucky band of mercenaries. Suddenly, the leader grabs his face. Frightened, the young man asks what he is talking about. In a cold tone, the man tells him to relax his body, stating it will make things easier. Soon after, a shadow rises behind Gamson to attack him, as Johan looks back. Surprised by the sudden movement, Johan turns around. Gamson's body falls to the ground, executed in front of his fellow mercenaries. Seeing the scene, Johan stands up and asks what the hell they think they're doing. In response, the group's leader justifies himself, saying that under the Emperor's decree, he merely executed the one who coveted a noble's wealth. Johan retorts, stating that his words were not taken seriously, as he was sure he wouldn't have to see their blood. All around, the other mercenaries and Eldons watch everything in silence. Addressing Sir Johan, the leader explains that even mercenaries have honor and rules to follow. According to him, Gamson's cowardly actions trampled on their honor and endangered the group's lives, and his action was just a way to protect those rules. The leader then offers his dagger, stating that if Johan believes his authority has been challenged, he should punish him. At that moment, Johan realizes the man is right, and that the mercenaries have their own honor, something he tries to protect with his own life. With that, Johan sheathes his sword. The crowd around continues to watch the scene in absolute silence. Then, he pushes the leader's blade away with his hand. Frankly, Johan admits that he didn't consider the mercenaries' position and apologizes. The gesture surprises both the mercenaries and Eldons, who never expected to see a noble apologize. Johan then asks Khan to put away the dagger, and the mercenary asks for forgiveness. Soon after, he thanks Khan for his understanding. One of the mercenaries scolds Khan for confronting a noble, but is told he can kick him if he does it again. From a distance, Eldons looks at Johan with new eyes. That noble was different from all the others. Fair and brave, but with no trace of authoritarianism, He sparks a question in Eldons of how someone like that could exist. With this, Eldons decides he will make Johan his ally at any cost, aiming to improve his own reputation within the company. Later, the group continues their journey on a road lit by the sunset. During the trip, Johan examines a pocket watch taken from the spoils. Mounted on his horse, he regrets choosing the item that seemed most valuable, only to find out it was broken. Suddenly, someone approaches from behind. A young woman calls him Master Johan and comments that now she needs to take care of someone else. Soon after, a voice calls to him from a nearby gate. The village chief approaches and offers gifts prepared by the village as a token of gratitude. Among them, Johan recognizes a watch and is surprised they found something so valuable. In addition, the chief also offers him a slave, stating that the boy is good with geography and will be useful. It was the first time Johan had seen a slave in such a deplorable condition, and leaving him like that would put his life at risk. Thanking him for the offer, he asks that they wash and feed the young man while they prepare to leave, at which point the chief announces that Godin has been accepted. Even while taking the boy in, Johan feels uncomfortable with the idea of owning a slave. At night, back at the camp, the mercenaries eat meat around a bonfire, while one of them tells Khan not to drink alcohol. Godin approaches Johan, who is cleaning his sword, and calls him master. The youth hands him a meal, and Johan thanks him. He then asks Godin to change how he addresses him and to start calling him by his name. Grateful, the boy thanks him, while Johan wonders if the kid is actually a woman. Curiously, he asks how someone skilled in geography ended up becoming a slave, but Godin replies it's not a pleasant story. The youth then asks if bad things also happen to nobles. Johan replies he'd like to hear his story first, and Godin agrees. He begins by saying he was originally a peddler, responsible for transporting and reselling weapons in the eastern region. Over time, on a nobleman's orders, he ended up involved in gold smuggling. Hearing this, Johan comments that such a crime would lead to the death penalty and that he was lucky to have survived. Godin explains he needed a lot of money to support his family, as his younger siblings were sick and starving. For this reason, he continued to deliver the gold the nobleman told him to hide, until one day, he was reported by the nobleman himself. Johan deduces that after serving his purpose, he was discarded and asks if he at least tried to ask for a trial. Shaking his head, Godin says that because of the emperor's decree, he wasn't even given the right to speak. At this, Johan asks if he managed to send the money to his siblings. The youth explains that to avoid immediate execution, all the money was used to bribe the guards. Godin apologizes, but Johan replies that he has nothing to be sorry for. This world was cruel enough to make him grind his teeth. Without power, people were treated like criminals, exploited without any chance to resist the atrocities of the nobles. Not even the private soldiers of House Brits escaped, surviving by stealing from others. Nor the people of Rutzbeck, who were driven to sacrifice their own children to survive. Let alone Godin, turned into a slave after being used and discarded. Johan wonders if all of this is really fair. Immediately after, he reminds himself that it's not the time to worry about the world, as he's being hunted by the Emperor's army and could die at any moment. Then, he calls for Godin, who responds promptly. Firmly, Johan declares that they are now comrades and that they must survive and live well together. The young woman blushes. Suddenly, a mercenary approaches and announces that a monster has appeared nearby. Johan stands up, lamenting he doesn't even have time to rest. Without delay, he asks where the creature is, and the man points the way as they all run. Godin stays behind, silently repeating Johan's words. Upon reaching the others, he asks if the monster is nearby. In response, they say it's too dark to see clearly, but there's definitely something in the darkness. At that moment, Johan emerges from behind the bushes, causing the mercenaries to tell him to get down. Calmly, he just says that it's all right. Johan then orders them to put away their weapons, leaving the mercenaries completely confused. Johan says he's going to take a look, and then turns to enter the dark forest. Khan states that fighting monsters requires special skills, and that it's always dangerous. In a serious tone, he reinforces that the group's mission is to protect Eldons, and that they can't take unnecessary risks. Suddenly, Johan stops and closes his eyes, saying he can feel something. Taking a few steps forward, he approaches a bush and recognizes a familiar pressure, capable of freezing anyone's heart. In the middle of the darkness, a pair of eyes stands out before him. Johan identifies the creature as the Black Wolf of Ill Omen, the same bastard from before. The last time he met it, the animal attacked the wolves of ActionToon instead of him. Even though it had countless chances, the creature never attacked him. That's why Johan knows the wolf doesn't intend to harm him. Calmly, he asks the hidden creature to come out. From the shadows, the huge black wolf emerges before him. Extending his hand, Johan asks if the wolf followed him and thanks it for saving him before. Khan asks if Johan really knows how to handle monsters, while one of the mercenaries admits he's never seen anything like it. The large wolf slowly approaches and sniffs Johan's face. Suddenly, the animal bites down on his head, causing one of the mercenaries to scream his name in panic. At that moment, Eldon steps forward and tells the little punk to get out of the way. With his head still in the wolf's mouth, Johan asks everyone not to be scared of the big guy. Holding the animal firmly, he reveals that this creature is the Guide of the Dawn. Excited, Eldons just asks if it's true. Confused, Johan repeats the name Guide of the Dawn, not understanding its meaning. Then Eldons begins to explain that in the Eastern Empire, there's an old song about this creature. According to the legend, on a moonlit night during the age of the Great War, a warrior gave the wolf a name. That name was Guide of the Dawn, and the wolf, upon receiving it, bowed its head before the warrior. Its eyes shone brightly, and everyone shouted as they saw it run at the forefront of the battlefield. At the end of the war that divided the continent, the warrior brought peace and died a hero. The black wolf cried for 3 days and 3 nights, then left on a journey towards places where order and heroes were needed. That is the legend of the Guide of the Dawn. Johan asks if Eldons isn't mistaken, as that creature is known as the Black Wolf of Ill Omen. In response, Eldons explains that the Guide of the Dawn originates from the folklore of the Eastern Empire, and that many details were distorted upon reaching the south. Reciting a passage, he says that the Guide of the Dawn punishes evil and submits to a brave hero. Eldons explains that this phrase comes from an ancient text of the Eastern Empire. At that instant, Johan begins to understand what kind of being this creature truly is. Eldons asks for permission to pet the wolf just once, and Johan agrees. However, as soon as he tries to get closer, the wolf growls fiercely at him. Given this, he concludes that maybe he shouldn't do that. Johan pets the wolf, which soon calms down, while Eldons wonders if the creature is only gentle with him. Suddenly, an idea strikes Eldons. He remembers a passage from the folklore of the Eastern Empire, which states that giving a name to the divine beast that follows you makes it your vassal. For a moment, he wonders if this southerner could be the legendary hero, but he quickly dismisses the thought, only to reconsider it a moment later. Eldons then asks Johan if he has already given a name to the Guide of the Dawn, to which he replies that he hasn't had the chance yet. Insistently, he asks Johan to name it right at that moment. According to Eldons, if the legend is true, something incredible will happen. Johan starts to think of a name, while Eldon suggests Katana. At the same time, Volin remembers the last time he witnessed something like this, when he buried that bastard from Cardway. Pointing at the creature, Johan decides the name will be Karamov. Surprised, Eldons reacts immediately, recognizing the name. The wolf's eyes light up with intensity. A sudden force emerges and envelops Johan and Eldons. The creature howls as a powerful energy transforms it. Before them, the Guide of the Dawn appears, now named Karamov. The transformed wolf faces its new master. Calmly, Johan pets it and says he'll be counting on it. Turning to Eldons, he agrees that it is indeed incredible, but asks what he is doing. All around, the mercenaries watch Eldons prostrated on the ground before Johan and Karamov. Overcome with emotion, Eldon states that everything happened exactly as described in the folklore, and that it's the first time he's witnessed a myth with his own eyes. He then declares that he has respected Johan from the moment he saw him. He praises him for protecting them from the bandits, for showing mercy to his enemies, and for being the chosen one of the divine beast. Before everyone, Eldons proclaims him the hero of hard times. The mercenaries and Godin react upon hearing the proclamation. Among murmurs, everyone wonders if Johan is really the hero of hard times. With an uncomfortable expression, Johan turns to Eldons. In a restrained tone, he apologizes. He reveals that he is not the hero they imagine, but just a wanderer from an insignificant house, worried about surviving. Furthermore, he admits that he's being hunted for having beaten Karamov to death. Johan apologizes again for disappointing him, but Eldons denies any feeling of disappointment. He then asks for permission to introduce him to the Mason Trading Company as a way to repay his kindness. Hearing this, Johan remembers hearing that Eldons was going to Marseille and asks what kind of place it is, as he's never heard of it. Eldons explains that Marseille is a famous free trade city and one of the few places the Emperor cannot reach. The information piques Johan's interest. With that, he accepts the offer, stating that he can't ignore such kindness, while Eldons thanks him. Silently, Johan considers that if the Emperor can't reach him there, it might be possible to start a new life as a merchant. While Eldon sings cheerfully, Johan hopes that no rumors spread about him being some kind of hero. Reflecting silently, he thinks about the title Hero of Hard Times, and how nice it would be if he really were someone like that. Still, He recognizes that, both in his past life and now, he is nothing more than a wanderer struggling to stay alive. The memory of an imposing figure comes to mind, decreeing that from that moment on, he would only know suffering. Clenching his fist, Johan admits that life before his death wasn't easy either, but this time is different. Now he decides to move forward step by step, guided by his own will. With that, the group departs towards the city of wealthy merchants, Marcel. Godin remarks that he never imagined he'd be able to return to this place. Walking through the market, Johan suggests they do some shopping. Suddenly, Karamov darts ahead of the group, causing Johan to call out to him. A vendor leans in, calls the animal a cute little thing, and offers it a treat. Watching the scene, Johan realizes that to everyone here, Karamov looks like just an adorable little dog. A day before entering Marcel, the group was gathered in the forest. At that moment, Johan turns to Karamov and calls his name. He explains that a monster of that size would cause a huge commotion in the city, and asks him to wait outside. In response, Karamov's body begins to undergo a transformation. Johan watches intently as the creature takes on a smaller form. Surprised, he asks if the wolf really got smaller and if this is another ability of a divine beast. Without wasting a moment, Godin runs up and hugs the small Karamov, exclaiming how cute he is. Given the situation, Johan concludes that at this size, there probably won't be any problems. Back in the present, a small crowd gathers, commenting on the unusual-looking puppy and wondering if it's a pet from a foreign land. Embarrassed, Godin apologizes for the little one's lack of manners, but Johan says they need to leave quickly, as they're still being pursued. Soon after, Godin calls out to Johan. He offers to take care of all the equipment if they buy a large bag, reminding him that he used to be an equipment merchant. He then shows that he only has 4 silver coins and asks if they can buy everything they need. Then, Godin takes just 1 silver coin. He confidently promises to get everything they mentioned using only that 1 coin. Johan tells him not to get carried away, questioning what could possibly be done with so little money. Sometime later, Godin and Johan are fully equipped, and Johan can hardly believe everything was bought with just 1 coin. They acquired a tactical bag for Johan and a supply backpack for Godin, making it easier to store their items. Using his impressive gift of gab, Godin managed to sell a completely destroyed helmet for a very high price and even got a mace for free. After buying vinegar, oil for equipment maintenance, and other supplies, they still got change back. Somehow, they ended up with more money than they started with. Seeing this, Johan reflects that if a broken helmet could be sold for so much, the equipment he buried for Karamov would be worth much more. He decides that if he ever needs to come back here later, he should dig it up and put it up for sale. Commenting on the matter, Johan observes that Godin seems happy doing such familiar work, and asks if he really was a merchant. While organizing the new backpack, the young man confesses that he missed this life. The memory of when he became a slave comes to mind, living each day in despair and in fear of death. Now, however, after meeting Johan, he feels he has regained the life he had when he was a merchant. Godin sincerely thanks him, stating that even if he had never become a slave, he still would have chosen to travel by his side. Johan says that hearing this makes him happy and that he'll be counting on him from now on. The response is immediate, accompanied by an enthusiastic, "Okay, Johan!" With that, the two decide to explore Marcel. After arriving in the city, Johan, who had only known hardship until then, finally experiences a happiness that had always eluded him. The meat he used to eat felt like shoe leather, while the meat in Marcel simply melts in his mouth. Before, he could barely bathe, and his whole body itched unbearably. In the city, however, he can bathe in warm water whenever he wants. During his travels, he never had a proper place to sleep, and cold, damp rocks hurt his body. In Marcel, he now sleeps under warm, soft blankets. Faced with this, Johan concludes that life here is very good and decides to settle in the city. He dreamed of living happily in Marcel, but fate would not follow the path he desired. The next day, the Marcel city square is bustling with activity. As he walks, Johan comments on how peaceful life seems, since it's been a long time since he's walked calmly through the streets. Suddenly, a strange feeling makes him realize that something is wrong. Noticing a group of people gathered, he wonders if another gang of bandits is nearby. One of the men confirms that criminals took Dave's daughter and stole all the goods they were transporting. Johan continues to eat his skewer while listening to the conversation. Others comment that with bandits on the loose, the people can't live without worry. Hearing this, Godin tells Johan that the city's atmosphere isn't good because of the bandits. Further ahead, a mercenary threatens a vendor, stating that he'll pay later and asking if the man knows who he is. He shouts that he just wants a meat skewer, as he hasn't eaten in 4 days. This man was a straggler from the ActionToon Wolves mercenary group, who got lost while chasing Johan and ended up in Marcel. He turns to continue the argument but stops abruptly. In that instant, the mercenary and Johan recognize each other. The man calls him a bastard and charges toward him. Johan realizes the Akaton wolves followed him to Marcel and understands the situation is extremely bad. He knows that nothing good can come from a fight in this place. The mercenary leaps at him with his sword raised, yelling for him to die. Before the blow can land, a man on horseback appears and strikes the attacker. The mercenary falls to the ground, defeated in front of the crowd. Observing the scene, the writer comments that with the current state of security, all sorts of people have been showing up. He then addresses Johan, calling him a wanderer, and asks if he's hurt. Johan replies that he isn't and thanks him for his help. The man smiles and advises him to always take care of himself. Shortly after, he turns and rides down the street. Meanwhile, an army of mercenaries begins to assemble in the square. The troops line up in formation across the entire city square. Bradil, captain of the Oakwood mercenaries, tells everyone not to worry. He confidently assures them that his 500 mercenaries will annihilate the band of bandits and make Marcel safe again. Godin is amazed to see them in person, while Johan asks if they are famous. In response, he explains that the Oakwood mercenaries are among the top mercenary groups in the Empire. Hearing this, Godin realizes that with bandits roaming the region, the group was surely hired to exterminate them. Johan remains silent, just watching the activity around him. In his thoughts, he reflects that if Bradil hadn't shown up to help him, his identity could have been exposed. If that had happened, he would no longer be able to stay in Marcel while the Empire hunted him. The memory of the promise that, from that point on, he would only know suffering returns to his mind. Taking a deep breath, he composes himself, remembering he is still a fugitive. The only way to survive is to build a good relationship with a major trading company, as not even the Emperor can interfere with them. Fortunately, Eldens holds him in high regard, which granted him the chance to interact with the Machan Trading Company. Still, he wonders what would happen if his identity were revealed before then. He concludes that if the company found out the Empire was after him, they wouldn't protect him in any way. If he's exposed before establishing a good relationship with Katana, his death is certain. With his objective clear, Johan clenches his fist, determined to go to the Katana Trading Company and get protection from the Empire. Until he earns the company's trust, his true identity cannot be revealed. Suddenly, a female voice calls out to Johan, asking if it's really him. The beast woman introduces herself as Ibelka, an exclusive employee of the Katana Trading Company. She explains that she heard of his deeds through Eldens and that she would like to form a close bond with him and his house. Finally, Ibelka invites him to accompany her to the Katana Trading Company if he isn't busy. They arrive at the Marcel branch of the Katana Trading Company. Outside, Godin tries to grab Karamov's paw, but the small animal just bites his hand. Alone, Johan waits in a luxurious room. He has finally reached the company, nurturing the hope that this place is his chance to change his life. Just then, a woman approaches from behind, confirms if he is Mr. Johan, and mentions she heard about him from Eldens. As he turns, Johan sees her stand up to introduce herself formally. She identifies herself as Yaon, the manager of the Marcel branch of the Katana Trading Company. Introducing himself in return, Johan says he is from the House of Yaitz, and she expresses the same pleasure in meeting him. Next, Yaon invites him to talk over a cup of tea, and he agrees. A hot beverage, a trade good from the Mediterranean region, is served before him. She comments that she hopes the drink is to his liking. Johan thanks her, though he realizes it's coffee. Curiously, he asks if the tea is made from roasted fruit seeds, and is praised by Yaon for his perception. Then she suggests they get down to business. Eon states that they can already guess the reason for his visit, causing Johan to spill his drink in surprise. He immediately wonders if they've discovered he's being hunted by the Emperor. Noticing his reaction, Eon begins to explain what she really meant. According to her, the reason is that Johan harbors ambition in his heart. Confused, he doesn't understand the statement. Yeon then reveals that she learned from Eldens that he protected the innocent and showed mercy to his enemies. Seeing him arrive in Marcel, a city infested with bandits, she perceived his ambition to save it with his own hands. Faced with this, Johan agrees, admitting that she saw his true intentions. Yeon asserts that ambition is not a bad thing, but a virtue of those who are worthy. Furthermore, she adds that the company enjoys sponsoring the ambitions of those it deems deserving. Johan realizes this is a clear opportunity for a deal. If he wishes, Yaon offers to introduce him to the governor of Marcel. He understands that the governor serves a role similar to a mayor, and that with this, he could gain the support of both the company and the city. Given this possibility, he concludes that he must accept, as then not even the Emperor would be able to reach him. Thanking her for the offer, Johan asks what exactly the Katana Trading Company's sponsorship entails. Johan explains that the company's support grants access to all the services it offers, such as restaurants, inns, and entertainment. Raising a finger, however, she warns that there is one condition. He must promise to fight under the company's banner. Johan demands that he fight for them whenever his help is needed. Johan asks if this means dealing with the bandits, but she denies it. She clarifies that the Oakwood mercenaries have already left for that mission, and that for him, another task is reserved. He remains silent for a moment before asking what this other task would be. Johan explains that the number of merchant districts resentful of the company has been growing, accusing them of monopolizing the market. She then proposes that he eliminate the members of these disgruntled districts, and, preferably, their children as well. She looks him straight in the eye and asks what he thinks of this single condition. Johan remains silent, reflecting on the proposal. The sun sets over the Katana Company branch in Marseille. Sometime later, Johan leaves the building. Outside, Godin greets him cheerfully and asks how the meeting went. In response, Johan just stares at the horizon, making Godin call his name. Suddenly, Johan excitedly yells to Godin that they're going to suck some honey. Confused, Godin just stares at him, repeating the phrase, "suck some honey?" An hour earlier, Johan and Eon were still talking in the meeting room. At that moment, Johan refuses her proposal. He argues that in a large city like Marseille, it's natural for complaints to arise when someone dominates distribution. He then questions if, instead of solving the problem through dialogue, she expects him to kill these people, including their children. He firmly states that he cannot murder innocents for such a reason and refuses to do so. Finally, he suggests they pretend this agreement never existed. Eon and Johan stare at each other in silence for a few moments. Then, her expression subtly changes. Eon informs him that he passed, leaving Johan confused. Bowing slightly, she explains it was all just a test to see if he was suitable for sponsorship, which leads him to ask if the monopoly was fake. The manager clarifies that the company has never monopolized distribution and is actually well regarded among merchants. She adds that she wishes to maintain the proposed terms, but that doesn't mean he needs to go to a battlefield immediately. Ian explains that the Oakwood mercenaries have already left to subdue the bandits, and that in the meantime, he is free to rest and enjoy the sponsorship. She then extends her hand and invites him to join the company. Johan enthusiastically accepts the offer. The two shake hands, sealing the deal, and Johan expresses his wish for the partnership to be beneficial for both of them. Back outside, Godin asks what the expression, "suck some honey," means. Johan explains that it's a way of saying they're going to spend big on something expensive using the Katana Trading Company's money. Soon after, Godin asks if the negotiations went well, and he confirms he finally got the sponsorship. The young man congratulates him, and Johan thanks him. In his mind, he reflects that everything is going well, since he secured support as soon as he arrived in Marseille. Although the bandits are still causing trouble, he believes that once the mercenaries deal with them, the city will become peaceful again. The happy life he always dreamed of no longer seems distant, so he decides it's time to relax. As they walk down the street, a sudden scream rings out. A crowd gathers around several bodies scattered on the ground. Johan wonders what happened and why there are bodies exposed in public, as Godin calls out to him. Goran approaches and warns that he is here, prompting Johan to ask what is happening. In response, Goran explains that the bandits have become more violent, now murdering merchants' families to intimidate the city. One of the bloodied bodies lies on the stone ground of the square. Observing the scene, Johan realizes the situation is far from resolved. Among the crowd, a citizen shouts that nothing is being done, and that the city of Marseille should be held responsible. Another man suggests the emperor is behind the bandits, but the idea is quickly dismissed as absurd. The crowd begins to argue, with some defending the emperor and others accusing him. The voices overlap in accusations and shouts from all sides, as Johan watches the chaos unfold. Facing the scene, he sees the newfound peace in Marseille being destroyed by the bandits. He then begins to wonder what the mercenaries are doing. In her office, Ibelka rushes in and announces that she has terrible news for manager Ayan. Already aware of the bodies that were found, Ayan asks what the Oakwood mercenaries are doing. Ibelka hesitates for a moment before answering. She reports that they haven't been able to contact the Oakwood mercenaries, which leads Eon to question what exactly that means. Ibelka then reveals that the liaison officer's body was found near the forest the day before, in a truly horrible state. Eon reflects that the Oakwood mercenaries have a military force comparable to that of an entire city, and can't imagine them being defeated by a mere band of bandits. Gripped by tension, she slams the table and calls for Ibelka, who responds promptly. The manager orders her to bring Swetelga, the mage of the Iphiel River, to find out through his prophecies if they were truly defeated. The Iphiel River flows under the moonlight. Swedelga dips his hand into the water and claims to understand the situation. He tells Katana that she is mistaken and that looking for the mercenaries will change nothing. According to the prophecy, Johan, the man who killed the Emperor's hound and fled, is now hiding in the pocket of Marcel. Still, Swedelga asserts that things will not go as that bastard imagined.